The great crystal chamber on Nexus Prime hummed with quiet energy as representatives from 47 different species took their seats. The Galactic Council had been meeting in this same hall for over 300 years, making decisions that affected billions of lives across the galaxy. Today felt different, though. Today felt heavy with the weight of judgment. Council Speaker Zethvar rose from his elevated platform, his reptilian scales catching the light from the chamber's glowing walls. He was old, even by his species' standards, and had seen many difficult decisions during his time leading the council. But this one troubled him more than most. The council will come to order. His deep voice echoed through the chamber. Today we address the matter of humanity's continued membership in our alliance. At the human delegation table, Ambassador Jake Morrison sat perfectly still. His dark suit was pressed and neat, his gray hair combed back in the formal style required for council sessions. To his left sat Lisa Grant, the human military advisor, and to his right was Ryan Cooper, their science liaison. All three had served the council faithfully for 15 years. Jake had known this day might come. The warnings had been there for months. Whispered conversations in hallways, closed meetings he wasn't invited to, the way some representatives avoided eye contact when he passed. Humanity had been walking on thin ice, and today that ice was about to break. The ethereal representative floated forward, her translucent form shimmering as she spoke. "The charges against the human delegation are as follows," she began, her voice like wind through crystals. "Repeated violations of council protocol, unauthorized military actions, failure to follow proper diplomatic channels, and most seriously, the recent incident involving Captain Amy Richardson and the Corvin situation." Jake's jaw tightened slightly at the mention of Amy's name. 3 weeks ago, Captain Richardson had received a distress signal from Corvin slave, miners being tortured by their alien masters. The council had been debating what to do for 6 months while people died. Amy had made the choice to act, sending her ships to free the slaves and arrest their captors. It was the right thing to do, but it wasn't the council way. "The human delegation may respond to these charges," Speaker Zethvar announced. Jake stood slowly, his movements calm and measured. He had prepared for this moment but hoped it would never come. Around him, 47 pairs of alien eyes watched, some curious, some hostile, most simply indifferent. "Honored Council," he began, "humanity has served this alliance for 15 years. In that time we have contributed to every major crisis, every scientific breakthrough, every diplomatic solution. When the Altarian plague threatened to wipe out their entire species, human doctors worked around the clock to find a cure. When the Vorthan shipping lanes were under attack by pirates, human ships patrolled those routes. When the mineral processing plants on Kepler 7 were failing, human engineers redesigned them." He paused, looking around the chamber. Some representatives nodded slightly, remembering those contributions. Others remained stone-faced. "Yes, Captain Richardson acted without council approval," Jake continued. "But while we spent 6 months debating, 17,000 Corvin civilians died in those mines. Our captain chose to save lives rather than follow procedure. If that makes us unfit for council membership, then perhaps we never belonged here in the first place." The chamber buzzed with quiet conversation as species discussed Jake's words in their native languages. The hive queen of the insectoid race clicked her mandibles in what might have been disapproval. The gaseous beings of the collective swirled in patterns that suggested agitation. One by one, the representatives spoke their concerns. The Crystalline Confederacy complained that humans were too emotional, making decisions based on feelings, rather than logic. The machine-like Nexus Coalition presented data showing that human actions had disrupted their carefully calculated plans 17 times in the past 5 years. "Humans are unpredictable," stated the representative from the O hegemony. "They act as individuals rather than following the collective will. This makes them dangerous to galactic stability. They bend rules whenever it suits them," added the Aquatic Federation delegate. "They claim it's for the greater good, but who decides what that good is? They do, without consulting the rest of us." Jake listened to each accusation without interruption. Some were fair, others were not. but all revealed the same underlying truth. Humanity was different from the other council species. They valued individual initiative over group consensus. They prioritized immediate action over lengthy deliberation. They trusted their instincts even when data suggested otherwise. Lisa Grant leaned forward and whispered, "Should we defend ourselves?" Jake shook his head slightly. There was no point. The decision had already been made before today's session began. This was just the formal process, the diplomatic dance that had to be performed before the vote. The debate continued for 2 hours. Occasionally, a representative would mention positive human contributions, but these were quickly overshadowed by complaints about human methods. The council wanted results, but they wanted them achieved through proper channels, following established procedures with full consultation and approval from all members. Finally, Speaker Zethvar called for order. The council will now vote on the motion to suspend humanity's membership, pending a full review of their conduct. The voting system was ancient, but effective. Each species crystal would glow either blue for approval, red for rejection, or remain clear for abstention. Jake watched as crystal after crystal lit up red across the chamber. The hegemony voted first, followed by the Crystalline Confederacy, then the Aquatic Federation. Red, red, red. A few crystals remained clear. The Corvin representative abstained, which Jake appreciated given recent events. 2 other species also abstained, probably out of respect for past human contributions. But no crystal glowed blue. Not one. The final tally was 44 votes to suspend, 3 abstentions, and 0 votes in favor of humanity. Speaker Zethvar announced the results with what sounded like genuine regret in his voice. The motion passes. Humanity's council membership is suspended indefinitely pending a full review of their conduct and methods. Jake stood again, gathering the papers from his desk with careful precision. Lisa and Ryan flanked him, their faces showing no emotion despite what had just happened. The chamber fell silent as the 3 humans prepared to leave. At the doorway, Jake turned back one final time. 47 alien species watched him, waiting for anger, protests, demands for reconsideration. Instead, Jake simply said, "We understand." Humanity withdraws from council space. The simplicity of those words sent a chill through the chamber. No threats, no promises of revenge, no emotional outbursts, just calm acceptance and a quiet statement of intent. As the human delegation walked out, Speaker Zethvar felt an unexpected unease. He had expected drama, negotiation, perhaps even human stubbornness. This composed withdrawal was somehow more unsettling than any tantrum would have been. The chamber doors closed behind the humans with a soft hiss. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then the business of the council resumed, representatives discussing trade agreements and territorial disputes as if nothing significant had happened. But in the back of many minds, a question lingered. Humanity had been part of the council for 15 years. They had contributed to every major success, solved countless problems, and provided perspectives that no other species could offer. Now they were gone, and something felt wrong about their absence. The Corvin representative was the first to leave the chamber after the session ended. As he walked through the corridors of the council building, he thought about Captain Amy Richardson and the human ships that had saved his people. The council had debated for 6 months while Corvins died. The humans had acted in 6 hours and saved 17,000 lives. Maybe the council had just made a terrible mistake. The message arrived at every human facility across the galaxy at exactly the same time. Ambassador Jake Morrison's face appeared on screens in research stations, military bases, diplomatic posts, and civilian colonies scattered across 47 different star systems. His expression was calm, but those who knew him well could see the weight of disappointment in his eyes. "Fellow humans," he began, "the Galactic Council has voted to suspend our membership indefinitely. Effective immediately, all human personnel are to begin withdrawal from council space. Pack only personal belongings. Leave all equipment and facilities intact. We depart with dignity and honor." At the Galactic Disease Control Center on Kepler Station, Dr. Helen Parker paused her work on the Zephyrian plague samples. She had been so close to a breakthrough, just days away from completing the cure that could save millions of lives. Her alien colleagues gathered around her workstation, their faces showing confusion and concern. "Helen, you cannot leave now," insisted Dr. Vexathari, the Altarian medical chief. "The plague mutations are accelerating. Without your research, we may never find a solution." Helen looked at the data on her screen. Months of careful work that was 90% complete. She began copying her personal notes to a portable drive, but left all the main research files on the station's computers. "I'm sorry, my friend. The council has made their decision. All my work is here for you to continue." "But we do not understand your human methods," protested Dr. Kleinthor from the Crystalline Medical Division. "Your approach to viral mutation is completely different from ours. We cannot simply pick up where you left off." Helen sealed her personal belongings in a single bag. "Then I suppose you'll have to find your own way. Humans have been excluded from council science. Perhaps that's for the best." She shook hands with each of her colleagues before walking to the transport bay, leaving behind 3 years of groundbreaking medical research. On the joint defense platform protecting the Meridian shipping lanes, Lieutenant Commander Pete Davis received similar orders. His human crew of 43 personnel began packing their gear, while their alien counterparts watched in growing alarm. Captain Vorgan of the Hegemony Navy approached Pete as he supervised the evacuation. "Commander, this is madness. Your people know these defensive systems better than anyone. The pirates will return within days of your departure." Pete continued loading equipment into transport containers. "The council voted, Captain. Humans are too unpredictable for galactic defense. I'm sure you'll manage without us." "The defensive protocols were designed by human engineers," Vorgan insisted. "The reaction times, the tactical responses, the maintenance schedules. We barely understand half of what your people built here." "Then I suggest you start learning quickly," Pete replied without looking up. "The platform is yours now. Good luck." As the human transport ships departed, they left behind a defense platform that had successfully repelled pirate attacks for 5 years. The remaining alien crews watched the ships disappear into hyperspace, suddenly aware of how quiet the station felt without human voices. On the agricultural world of Terra Nova, Farmer Joe Miller walked through his vast grain fields. One last time. The harvest was just beginning, and the crops would feed 3 neighboring systems that had suffered recent famines. His Corvin workers, former slaves freed by Captain Amy Richardson, gathered around him with worried expressions. "Boss Miller, where will we go?" asked Tekmara, his field supervisor. "The council species will not accept us. We are still considered escaped slaves by our former masters." Joe looked across the fields he had spent 8 years cultivating. "I don't know, Tech, but wherever humans go, you're welcome to come with us. You've earned that right." The Corvin workers nodded gratefully. They had worked alongside humans long, enough to understand that when humans made a promise, they kept it. As the transport ships landed to evacuate the colony, the Corvins boarded alongside their human friends, abandoning the harvest that could have fed millions. Captain Sandra Blake stood on the bridge of the evacuation fleet's largest vessel, the civilian transport New Horizon. Her screen showed the scope of humanity's withdrawal across the galaxy: 847 research facilities, 1,200 joint military installations, 340 diplomatic outposts, and 2.8 million human civilians living throughout council space. "Status report," she called to her navigation officer. "All sectors reporting on schedule, Captain," replied Lieutenant Chris Walsh. "The last facilities will be evacuated within 72 hours. No incidents reported." Sandra nodded, watching the steady stream of transport ships joining her fleet. Each ship carried part of humanity's contribution to galactic civilization. Scientists, engineers, doctors, teachers, farmers, soldiers, and diplomats, all leaving behind years of work and relationships. "Captain," her communications officer spoke, "We're receiving multiple requests from alien colleagues asking us to stay. Some are offering to petition the council for individual exemptions. Deny all requests, Sandra ordered. The council made their position clear. Humanity withdraws completely. On the medical research station orbiting Proxima 7, Dr. Nancy Lopez finished documenting her work on regenerative tissue therapy. Her breakthrough could help wounded soldiers from any species heal faster and more completely. She had planned to present her findings at next month's Galactic Medical Conference. Her research partner, Dr. Ethel Nara of the Aquatic Federation, watched her pack with obvious distress. Nancy, please reconsider. Your tissue regeneration work is revolutionary. No other species has achieved such results. Nancy sealed her personal research notes in a secure case. The council decided that human methods are too dangerous. Perhaps they're right. Maybe it's better if other species don't have access to our unpredictable science. That is not what they meant, Dr. Ethel Nara insisted. Your research saves lives. How can saving lives be dangerous? Ask the council, Nancy replied, heading for the transport bay. They're the ones who voted us out. As evacuation ships departed, from research stations, military bases, and colonies across the galaxy, they broadcast the same message on all frequencies. The voice belonged to Jake Morrison, speaking for all of humanity. Citizens of the Galactic Council, humanity thanks you for 15 years of cooperation. We have learned much from our association with your species, and we hope our contributions have been of some value. We harbor no anger toward the Council or its members. Your decision is understood and accepted. We wish you peace and prosperity in all your future endeavors. The message was repeated in 47 different languages, ensuring every species could understand humanity's farewell. There were no threats, no promises of revenge, no bitter accusations. Just gratitude for past cooperation and best wishes for the future. On worlds throughout Council space, alien citizens watched human transports lifting off from spaceports. Many had worked alongside humans for years, forming friendships that crossed species lines. The departures were emotional, with promises to stay in touch and invitations to visit human space when possible. But as the last human ships crossed the boundary of Council territory, something became clear to many observers. This was not a temporary withdrawal or a negotiating tactic. This was a final departure. Humanity was leaving Council space forever, taking with them all their knowledge, skills, and perspectives. The silence that followed was profound. For 15 years, human voices had been part of the daily life of Council civilization. Human innovations had solved problems. Human perspectives had offered new solutions. Human determination had overcome obstacles that seemed impossible. Now they were gone, and the galaxy felt their absence immediately. Research projects stalled without human input. Defense systems functioned less effectively without human tactical thinking. Medical facilities struggled with procedures that human doctors had made look easy. In the great crystal chamber on Nexus Prime, Speaker Zethvar stood alone after the day's routine session. The Council had voted to suspend humanity, expecting them to argue, negotiate, or at least try to change the decision. Instead, they had simply accepted it and left. As he looked at the empty seats where the human delegation had sat for 15 years, Zethvar wondered if the Council had just made the biggest mistake in its 300-year history. But it was too late for regrets. Humanity was gone, and the galaxy would have to learn to function without them. The question was whether it could. The first sign of trouble came exactly 3 weeks after the last human transport had left Council space. Dr. Vexthari was working late in the Galactic Disease Control Center when the emergency alert sounded. The plague monitoring satellites around the Zephyrian homeworld had detected something terrible. The disease that Dr. Helen Parker had been studying was changing. The virus had mutated into something new, something more dangerous than before. The satellites showed infection rates, climbing faster than ever recorded. Without human medical expertise, the Altarian doctors stared at data they could not fully understand. Run the Parker protocols, Dr. Vexithari ordered his team. We tried, sir, replied his assistant. The human research methods are too complex. We understand maybe 30% of Dr. Parker's approach. The rest might as well be written in an alien language. Dr. Vexthari felt panic rising in his chest. Helen had been days away from completing a cure when she left. Her research files were all still in the computer system, but without her unique human perspective on viral behavior. The data was nearly useless. "Contact the council," he said quietly. "Tell them we need human medical assistance immediately." Meanwhile, in the Meridian shipping sector, Captain Vorgan was discovering his own problems. The defense platform that humans had operated for 5 years was failing. Not mechanically, but tactically. The alien crews could maintain the equipment and fire the weapons, but they could not think like humans. The first pirate attack came at dawn on a Tuesday. 37 pirate ships dropped out of hyperspace in a coordinated assault pattern. The defense platform's sensors detected them immediately, just as they had when humans operated the system. But the response was different. The alien crews followed standard council military procedures. They identified the threats, calculated optimal firing solutions, and requested permission to engage from the sector command. By the time permission was granted, 12 merchant vessels had been destroyed and the pirates were escaping with their cargo. Lieutenant Commander Pete Davis would have fired first and asked for permission later. He would have anticipated the pirates' escape routes and positioned ships to cut them off. He would have saved those 12 merchant vessels without hesitation. "Status report," Captain Vorgan demanded after the attack. "Enemy forces have withdrawn," his tactical officer reported. "Damage assessment shows 12 civilian vessels destroyed, 43 crew members killed, cargo worth 7 million credits stolen." Vorgang stared at the tactical display in frustration. When humans operated this platform, pirate losses were always higher than merchant losses. The pirates had learned to avoid this sector entirely. Now, after just one engagement, word would spread through the criminal networks that the Meridian route was vulnerable again. On the agricultural world of Terra Nova, the abandoned grain fields were dying. The Crystalline Confederacy had sent their best agricultural specialists to continue the harvest, but they quickly discovered that human farming methods were completely different from their own. Joe Miller had not followed standard galactic agricultural procedures. He had modified the soil composition, adjusted the growing cycles, and created hybrid crops that produced twice the normal yield. His methods worked, but no one else understood why. "The soil chemistry is all wrong," reported the lead crystalline agriculturalist to his superiors. "The human farmer used techniques that should have failed completely, yet the crops thrived under his care." "Can you replicate his methods?" asked the agricultural coordinator. "We are trying, but the human approach seems to ignore basic scientific principles. They made decisions based on intuition and experience rather than established procedures. We cannot operate that way." The grain fields that could have fed 3-star systems for a year began to rot in the fields. The crystalline specialists harvested what they could using conventional methods, but the yield was less than 20% of what Joe Miller had produced. Food shortages began appearing across 17 systems that had relied on human agricultural worlds. The Council's emergency food distribution system, designed for temporary relief, was overwhelmed by the sudden massive demand. In the industrial sectors, problems were mounting just as quickly. The Vorthon mineral processing facilities shut down one by one as alien engineers realized that human modifications to their equipment were far more extensive than anyone had known. "We cannot operate these systems," the chief Vorthon engineer reported to his government. "The humans redesigned 70% of our extraction equipment. Their modifications improved efficiency by 300%, but we do not understand how they work. The Vorthon mining operations had been the most productive in the galaxy under human supervision. Now they sat idle while engineers tried to figure out what the humans had done to make them so effective." Emergency sessions of the Galactic Council became daily occurrences. Representatives who had voted to suspend humanity just 1 month earlier now found themselves discussing crisis after crisis caused by the human departure. Speaker Zethvar called the chamber to order for the 3rd emergency session that week. His reptilian features showed exhaustion as he addressed the assembled representatives. "The council will hear reports on the current situation," he announced. The Hive Queen spoke first, her mandibles clicking with agitation. 17 of our primary research projects have stalled completely. Human scientists were involved in every major breakthrough we achieved in the past 5 years. Without their input, our research divisions are paralyzed. The representative from the collective swirled in patterns that indicated distress. Our deep space exploration program has been cut by 40%. Human navigators had an intuitive understanding of hyperspace routes that we cannot replicate. They found passages that our computers said were impossible. One by one, the representatives reported similar problems. The Aquatic Federation's underwater cities were experiencing technical failures because human engineers had designed their life support systems. The Nexus Coalition's manufacturing plants were producing defective goods because human quality control methods were no longer available. Ambassador Krell Noth of the Hegemony presented the most damaging evidence. He had spent the past week analyzing human contributions to Council operations over the past 15 years. Honored colleagues, he began, I have completed a comprehensive review of human involvement in Council activities. The results are disturbing. He activated a holographic display showing statistical data that made several representatives gasp in surprise. Humans were directly involved in solving 92% of major galactic crises over the past decade. They provided unique solutions to problems that other species could not resolve. Their departure has created a competency vacuum across multiple sectors. The chamber fell silent as representatives absorbed this information. The Crystalline Confederacy's representative was the first to speak. This cannot be accurate. Humans comprised less than 4% of Council personnel. The data is correct, Krell Noth replied. Human contributions were not measured by their numbers but by their effectiveness. They approached problems from angles that other species never considered. They found solutions where we saw only obstacles. Dr. Yithran, the Council's chief analyst, presented her own findings with growing alarm. The human approach to problem-solving was fundamentally different from ours. While we followed established procedures and waited for consensus, they acted on incomplete information and adapted as situations changed. She displayed examples of human crisis responses compared to standard Council procedures. In every case, human methods had been faster, more effective, and more creative than the approved alternatives. We focused on their violations of protocol, she continued, but we failed to recognize that their protocols were superior to ours. They achieved results that we could not match using our traditional methods. The weight of realization settled over the chamber like a heavy cloud. The representatives had been so concerned about human unpredictability that they had failed to appreciate human effectiveness. They had dismissed humanity for being different, not recognizing that those differences were exactly what made them valuable. Speaker Zethvar looked around the chamber at faces that showed growing panic. Food shortages, pirate attacks, medical crises, industrial failures, and research delays were all mounting simultaneously. The galaxy was discovering that human contributions had not been helpful additions to Council civilization. They had been fundamental supports holding it together. The chair will entertain motions, he announced quietly. The Corvin representative stood first. I move that we send a diplomatic mission to human space immediately. We must request their return to Council. Membership. Seconded, called out 12 voices simultaneously. All in favor? Speaker Zethvar asked. Every crystal in the chamber glowed blue. The vote was unanimous, exactly the opposite of the vote that had dismissed humanity just 1 month earlier. The session ended. Representatives hurried from the chamber to contact their governments. The message was the same from every species. The Council had made a terrible mistake, and now they had to find a way to fix it before their civilization collapsed completely. The Council's diplomatic vessel, Harmony's Dawn, approached the edge of human space with careful precision. Ambassador Torgeth stood on the bridge, watching the sensor displays with growing amazement. What they found at the border was nothing like what anyone had expected. Ambassador, his navigator called out, we're detecting massive construction activity. There are orbital platforms, defense stations, and what appears to be a complete shipyard facility. Torgeth studied the readings in disbelief. It had been only 6 weeks since humanity left Council space. Building projects of this scale should have taken years, not months. Request permission to enter human territory, he ordered his communications officer. The response came within minutes. A human voice, calm and professional, spoke over the communication system. Council Vessel Harmony's Dawn. This is Admiral Kate Johnson of the Human Defense Fleet. You are granted permission to enter our space. Please maintain your current course and speed. Escort vessels will join you shortly. 3 human ships materialized. From what had seemed like empty space, their stealth systems disengaging as they took formation around the Council vessel. Torgeth noticed immediately that these ships were different from the vessels humans had operated while in Council space. They were sleeker, more advanced, and clearly more powerful. Admiral Johnson, Torgeth transmitted, I am Ambassador Torgeth, representing the Galactic Council. We request an audience with your leadership regarding humanity's possible return to Council membership. Understood, Ambassador. You are cleared to proceed to New Geneva, our capital world. Flight time is approximately 4 hours. As the small fleet traveled through human space, Torgeth and his team observed everything they could through their sensors. What they saw defied all expectations. In just 6 weeks, humanity had established a thriving civilization that seemed to surpass anything they had built while under Council restrictions. Space stations bustled with activity. Shipping lanes carried vessels from dozens of different species, including many that had left Council space to join humanity. Research facilities sparkled with new construction, and manufacturing plants operated at levels that seemed impossible for such a young civilization. How is this possible? Whispered Dr. Nell Tara, the Council's science advisor who had joined the diplomatic mission. They have achieved in weeks what should have taken decades. Perhaps, Torgeth replied quietly. We never understood what humans were truly capable of. New Geneva appeared on their screens like a jewel against the darkness of space. The planet's surface showed cities that blended familiar human architecture with revolutionary new technologies. Parks and cultural centers flourished alongside research facilities and manufacturing complexes. Everything looked clean, efficient, and somehow more alive than the sterile Council worlds. Director Ben Murphy met them at the spaceport, flanked by several other human officials. Torgeth recognized Murphy from Council records. He had been a minor diplomatic aide when humanity was expelled. Now he wore the simple but elegant uniform of humanity's civilian leadership. Ambassador Torgeth, Murphy said with a warm smile. Welcome to New Geneva. I hope your journey was comfortable. Director Murphy, Torgeth replied. Thank you for agreeing to meet with us. The Council has sent me to discuss humanity's possible return to our alliance. Murphy's expression remained friendly but neutral. Of course, we're always willing to talk. But first, would you like a tour of our new capital? I think you might find it interesting. The tour that followed opened Torgeth's eyes to things he had never imagined possible. They visited research laboratories where human scientists worked on projects that had been forbidden under Council regulations. The restrictions that had once limited human creativity were gone, and the results were spectacular. Dr. Alan Gray, head of human medical research, showed them through his facilities with obvious pride. We've completed the cure for the Zephyrian plague, he announced casually as if discussing the weather. Also treatments for 6 other diseases that the Council classified as incurable. Impossible, Dr. Neltara gasped. The Zephyrian plague research was 90% complete when Dr. Parker left. How could you finish it so quickly? Without Council oversight slowing our approval processes, Dr. Gray explained, we were able to test and refine treatments much faster. Dr. Parker's original research was excellent, but she had been forced to work within very limiting guidelines. Free from those restrictions, we completed her work in 2 weeks. They were shown manufacturing facilities that produced technologies combining innovations from dozens of different fields. Human engineers had taken concepts that Council regulations kept strictly separated and merged them into revolutionary new systems. The most stunning revelation came when they met with General Linda Foster, head of the human military. She welcomed them into a briefing room where tactical displays showed the current state of human territory. As you can see, she said, gesturing to the displays, we have eliminated pirate activity across our entire territory. The process took exactly 3 weeks. 3 weeks? Torgeth could barely believe what he was hearing. Pirates have plagued the galaxy for centuries. How could you eliminate them so quickly? Simple, General Foster replied. We used methods that the Council considered too aggressive. We tracked pirate bases to their sources, eliminated their supply lines, and gave captured pirates a choice between prison and joining our defense forces. Most chose to join us. She showed them statistics that made the Council delegation stare in amazement. Crime rates in human space were lower than anywhere in the galaxy. Formerly hostile species were working together peacefully. Trade flowed freely between worlds that had been enemies for generations. The key, General Foster explained, was treating the causes of piracy rather than just fighting the symptoms. Most pirates are desperate people with few other choices. Give them better options and they stop being pirates. Director Murphy took them to meet with representatives from the species that had joined humanity after leaving Council space. The Corvin delegation was there, along with groups from 12 other species who had chosen human leadership over Council bureaucracy. Why did you leave the Council? Torgeth asked the Corvin representative. Because humans saved us when the Council would not, Tekmara replied simply. When we were slaves, the Council debated for months while we died. Captain Richardson acted in hours and freed us. When humans were expelled, they invited us to come with them. The choice was easy. Throughout the day, Torgeth heard similar stories. Species after species had found that human methods worked better than Council procedures. Without the bureaucratic restrictions that had limited their potential, humans had flourished beyond anyone's imagination. As evening approached, Director Murphy led the Council delegation to his office for formal discussions. The room was simple, but comfortable, with large windows showing the bustling city below. Now, Murphy said, settling into his chair, you mentioned something about humanity returning to Council membership. Torgeth presented the Council's formal offer, restored membership with full privileges, positions of leadership within Council departments, complete autonomy for human operations within Council space. The terms were generous, far better than anything humanity had been offered before. Murphy listened politely to every detail, occasionally asking clarifying questions but showing no excitement about the proposal. When Torgeth finished, Murphy was quiet for a long moment. That's a very generous offer, Murphy finally said, much more generous than anything we received during our 15 years of Council membership. The Council recognizes that we made errors in our previous relationship with humanity, Torgeth admitted. We are prepared to correct those mistakes. I appreciate that, Murphy replied. But I have to ask, why now? What changed between the day you expelled us and today? Torgeth hesitated, then decided honesty was the best approach. Your departure created problems we did not anticipate. Systems are failing across Council space. We need human expertise to function effectively. So you need us, Murphy said quietly. You don't want us back because you value our contributions or respect our methods. You need us because your civilization is collapsing without us. The truth of those words hit Torgeth like a physical blow. That was exactly the situation, and Murphy had seen through all the diplomatic language to the reality beneath. What is your answer to our offer? Torgeth asked. Murphy stood and walked to the window looking out at the thriving human city below. Ambassador, I need to be honest with you. Humanity gave the Council 15 years of our best efforts. We solved your problems, fought your battles, and tried to make your vision of galactic unity work. In return, you told us we were too dangerous, too unpredictable, too human. He turned back to face the Council delegation. You were right about one thing. We are human, and humans don't make the same mistake twice. You're refusing our offer? Torgeth asked, though he could already see the answer in Murphy's expression. I'm telling you that humanity has found a better path. We've built something here that works better than anything we achieved under Council oversight. Why would we give that up to return to a system that constrained our potential? 6 months after humanity's departure from Council space, the galaxy had become a very different place. Speaker Zethvar stood in the great crystal chamber on Nexus Prime, looking out at seats that remained empty. 17 species had formally withdrawn from the Council in the past month alone, choosing to join humanity's growing confederation instead. The morning's crisis reports covered his desk like fallen leaves. The Corvin Rebellion, which Captain Amy Richardson had once contained, with a single decisive action, now raged across 12 star systems. The Council's attempts to negotiate had failed completely. Their military responses had been ineffective. What had been a manageable local uprising was becoming a galactic revolution. Speaker Zethvar, his aide announced, the Emergency Medical Council is ready to report on the Zephyrian plague situation. Zethvar nodded wearily. The plague had mutated 3 more times since humanity's departure. Without Dr. Helen Parker's expertise, the death toll now exceeded 40 million beings across multiple worlds. The Council's medical divisions worked desperately to find treatments, but they lacked the innovative thinking that human doctors had provided. In the Meridian sector, what had once been the safest shipping route in the galaxy had become a pirate highway. Captain Vorgan's defense platform still functioned, but barely. Without human tactical insight, the alien crews could only react to attacks instead of preventing them. 12 more merchant vessels had been lost just this week. The door to the chamber opened, and Ambassador Krell-Noth entered with a grim expression. He carried the latest intelligence reports from human space, and the news was not encouraging for the Council. Speaker, the situation continues to deteriorate, Krell-Noth reported. 3 more species have applied to join the Human Confederation. The Aquatic Federation's eastern colonies have declared independence and requested human protection. Zethvar sank deeper into his chair. What is the current extent of human influence? 43 star systems under direct human control, Krell-Noth replied. Another 67 systems in the process of joining their confederation. If current trends continue, human space will exceed Council territory within the year. The irony was bitter. The Council had expelled humanity for being too aggressive and unpredictable. Now that same humanity was peacefully attracting species that were abandoning the Council in increasing numbers. Meanwhile, in the thriving capital of New Geneva, Director Ben Murphy reviewed the morning's reports with satisfaction. The Human Confederation was growing faster than anyone had anticipated, but the growth was manageable. Unlike the Council's rigid bureaucracy, human administrative systems were designed to adapt and expand as needed. Status report from the Integration Committee, requested Murphy. Dr. Carol Adams, his chief of interspecies relations, consulted her tablet. The Vorthon mining colonies have completed their transition to our economic system. Productivity is up 300% using human efficiency methods. The former crystalline agricultural worlds are reporting record harvests after implementing Joe Miller's farming techniques. Murphy nodded with approval. And the refugee situation? All Corvin civilians have been successfully resettled, Dr. Adams reported. They're adapting well to human culture while maintaining their own traditions. Several Corvin engineering teams have made significant contributions to our ship designs. The integration of alien species into human society had been surprisingly smooth. Unlike the Council's approach of maintaining strict separation between species, humans encouraged cultural mixing and mutual learning. The results had exceeded everyone's expectations. A communication alert sounded, and Murphy's secretary announced an incoming message from Admiral Kate Johnson. Director, Admiral Johnson's voice came through clearly. We've received another request for protection. The hegemony's outer colonies want to leave Council space. They're offering to share their industrial technology in exchange for our defense. Murphy considered this for a moment. The hegemony had been one of humanity's strongest critics in the Council. Now their own colonies were seeking human protection. What's the tactical situation, he asked. The colonies are strategically valuable, Admiral Johnson replied. But accepting them would bring us into direct conflict with the hegemony military. They won't let their industrial base go without a fight. Send a diplomatic message to the hegemony government, Murphy decided. Inform them that we respect their territorial claims, but we also respect the right of colonies to choose their own government. If they want to negotiate, we're available. This was the human approach that had proven so effective, firm but reasonable, prepared for conflict but preferring negotiation. It was exactly the kind of flexibility that the Council had always criticized, and exactly what made human diplomacy successful. On the Council world of Alteria Prime, Dr. Vexthari struggled with another outbreak of the mutated plague. His medical team had been working for months to understand the human research files that Dr. Parker had left behind. They could follow her procedures, but they could not adapt them to new situations the way she had. Status of the Parker protocols? He asked his research team. Limited success, his assistant reported. We can treat the original plague strain, but each new mutation requires us to start the research process over again. Dr. Parker's methods were adaptive. Ours are not. Dr. Vexithari looked at the data screen showing infection rates across multiple worlds. Human medical thinking had been intuitive, creative, able to leap from incomplete data to effective solutions. Council medical science was thorough and careful, but too slow for rapidly changing situations. Sir, another technician called out, we're receiving a transmission from human space. Dr. Vexithari authorized the connection, and Dr. Alan Gray's face appeared on the screen. The human doctor looked tired but determined. Dr. Vexithari, Dr. Gray said, we've been monitoring the plague situation in Council space. We have effective treatments for all current mutations. We're prepared to share them freely. Why would you help us? Dr. Vexithari asked, surprised. The Council expelled your people. Because people are dying, Dr. Gray replied simply. Politics doesn't matter when lives are at stake. We'll transmit the treatment protocols immediately. No conditions, no payment required. The transmission ended, leaving Dr. Vexthari staring at his screen in amazement. Within minutes, his computers received detailed treatment plans for every known plague mutation. The humans had not only solved the problems that Council doctors couldn't handle, they were sharing the solutions freely with their former critics. Back on New Geneva, Director Murphy prepared for his scheduled address to the galaxy. The transmission would reach every inhabited system, both in Council space and in the growing human confederation. His message had been carefully crafted to be firm but not threatening, confident but not arrogant. Citizens of the galaxy, Murphy began, speaking to cameras that would broadcast his words across thousands of worlds. 6 months ago, humanity was expelled from the Galactic Council. We accepted that decision with dignity and withdrew peacefully from Council space. He paused, looking directly into the camera. Today, we address the galaxy not as former Council members, but as leaders of a new kind of civilization, a civilization built on cooperation instead of bureaucracy, on results instead of procedures, on hope instead of fear. The address continued for 20 minutes, outlining humanity's vision for the future. Any species or individual seeking to join the human confederation was welcome, provided they embraced human values of innovation, individual dignity, and practical problem-solving over rigid bureaucracy. We hold no grudges against the Council, Murphy concluded. We wish them success in their endeavors, but we have chosen a different path, and that path leads to a brighter future for all who choose to walk it with us. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Communication networks across the galaxy buzzed with applications for Confederation membership. Entire species applied to join humanity's growing alliance. Scientists, engineers, doctors, and countless others abandoned Council space to join the human civilization they saw as more dynamic and effective. On Nexus Prime, Speaker Zethvar watched Murphy's address with growing despair. The great crystal chamber around him felt empty and lifeless compared to the energy and hope he saw in the human leader's words. Ambassador Torgeth entered the chamber, carrying the latest intelligence reports. Speaker, the situation is becoming critical. The Council now controls less than 40% of its former territory. At current rates, we will be reduced to a regional government within 2 years. Zethvar looked around the chamber where the Council had made decisions for over 300 years. Perhaps, he said quietly, it's time to consider joining them instead of fighting them. Sir? Torgeth asked, uncertain he had heard correctly. Humanity was right, Zethvar admitted. Our system was holding back progress instead of encouraging it. They found a better way, and the galaxy is choosing to follow them. He stood slowly, his old bones creaking with the movement. Draft a message to Director Murphy. Inform him that the Council formally requests to discuss joining the Human Confederation.